Hello YouTube Vinyl community, I'm Jeff Harris and welcome to the Vinyl Record Info channel. And today, I got a classic video for you. I feel like I would say most, vinyl record centric YouTube channels will do this video at some point in its channel history. And it's time for mine. And that's the top 10 most essential albums for vinyl record collectors. Now, there's a difference here. There's a little bit of nuance, right? These are not my 10 favorite records or 10 favorite albums or whatever, or they're not my this is about vinyl record collecting, right? Collecting vinyl. If you're a new vinyl record collector, here are the 10 that I think are essential to collect, and I think you should have in your collection if you're a rock and roll fan. Again, by now, if you're watching this channel, you know that my channel is basically all about 60s and 70s, rock, psych, and prog. So there's no jazz in this. There's no country. There's no hip hop in this list. It's all within the rock genre, the various rock genres. So, again, these are not my favorite albums. These are just, I think, what are the most essential to collect if you're a new vinyl record collector or any vinyl record collector to have in your collection. They're just important, So let's kick it off. And some of these I bet you're all going to guess because they're on a million top lists, but they're on a million top lists for a reason, right? All right, so number 1, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. As far as progressive rock and concept album goes, I mean, this is kind of, everybody knows this record, right? Even if you don't really know a lot of Pink Floyd's discography, you know this album, or you at least know this cover. This is the marketing behind this thing it lasts to this day. T-shirts and people using this theme in movies and TV shows, and this record is everywhere. But it's for a reason. There's a reason why this record's so popular, and because it's that good. This is the first U.S. press on that Harvest label. It's just incredible stuff. There's not much more I can say about this. This is a pretty clean U.S. first press. I don't have a UK, solid triangle. So, if you're collecting this, right? If for somehow you find a UK press in this triangle right here that you see that has no color, if it's solid blue, you got something there. So go check your copy of Pink Floyd just in case. But yeah, this one's absolutely amazing. That should be right up there at the top of the top 10 for most essential records to collect and to have in your collection. All right, so this is Rush, Moving Pictures. Beautiful first U.S. press of the Shrink. Out of all the Rush albums, right, and I think having a Rush album in your collection is essential. This is probably the one. This is the one that's most accessible to everybody. This one has the most hits. When you put on classic rock radio and Rush is playing, it's likely a song from this album. It's going to be Tom Sawyer or Limelight or maybe Red Barchetta. A lot of the hits are on this record. It's fantastic. This is some of the pinnacle of Rush right here. I love this album so much. Again, everybody should have at least one Rush record in their collection. Personally, I would go 2112, but for your average collector, this is the one, right? This is the one to have. All right, another classic. These are all classics, but this is Leonard Skinner's Second Helping. This is an album that has Sweet Home Alabama on it. It's unbelievable how awesome this record is. If you like Southern rock in the least bit, this is the record to have, in my opinion, out of the vast Leonard Skinner discography. I think this is the one. it's just unbelievable. And this is a really cool one because this is a first press on the Sounds of the South label before they went fully over to MCA. And, and then I also have the cool single with it. This is the Sweet Home Alabama on the Sounds of the South label, 45. Really, really awesome stuff. I'll take out the 45 so you can see the label better on the LP. But yeah, so that's what it looks like. Typically you'll see just like the normal MCA label, but sometimes it's black with like a rainbow, or sometimes it's like white. There's a bunch of different MCA labels, but if you get the very, very first press, it has that Sounds of the South on there. So that's kind of what to look out for on that one. Awesome stuff. Sweet Home Alabama, what else can you say about that? So, Leonard Skinner's Second Helping, I think, is essential. One of my favorite classic rock bands of all time. I love CCR. CCR is just one of my favorite bands ever. And again, if you can everybody should have this record in their collection. If you're going to have one from CCR, this is the one. Cosmo's Factory. Ramble Tamble, Traveling Band, Run Through the Jungle. This is another one that has just all the crazy hits. Up Around the Bend. That might be like my favorite. Who'll Stop the Rain. I Heard It Through the Grapevine. As Long as I Can See the Light. And this is a greatest hits album, basically. I mean, every song on this record is incredible. Up Around the Bend, I think, is my favorite CCR song. Again, because when I put on CCR, I want to jam out, right? This is the, why I always say, like, going down the highway, roll down the windows in your car, crank up the, the volume on your stereo, and just blast Up Around the Bend. Oh, man, that's fantastic stuff. So, this is the one to have. I think everybody should have this in their collection. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Cosmo's Factory. All right, another fantastic album. We got the Beatles, Abbey Road. This is a first UK press on that Green Apple label. And, I've said it a million times, I'm not the biggest Beatles fan, right? I appreciate their impact and inspiration to music more than I think I like the music. But everybody likes it. I like the Beatles. I'm just, the age-old, comparison. Are you a Beatles or Rolling Stone guy? I'm a Rolling Stone guy. But I love the Beatles too, And I think this is my favorite album from the Beatles. Again, it has a ton of their hits on it. Iconic cover album. This is the one to have, in my opinion, and every record collector should have this in their collection. Even if just for the historical fact of just, even if you don't love the Beatles, they had a huge impact on whoever you do love in rock and roll. Trust me, very, very influential, and just fantastic stuff. Okay, again, Black Sabbath. Self-titled. This is their first album. I love Black Sabbath. This is a first U.S. press at Green Warner Brothers. Absolutely fantastic. I always go back and forth. Like, am I cool with just my greenies, or do I need to go out and try to get all the Vertigos, like the first press Vertigos? And it's interesting because everybody who I talk to who's like really into Black Sabbath, like even more into Black Sabbath than I am, they always say like these greenies are some of the best. Obviously the White Label Promo would be the best, but the greenies are they just sound better than the Vertigos, and I agree with that. I've had some Vertigos in the past, and I've always sold them because I always just know people who are looking for them, and it's just good vinyl karma to keep them moving. So I'm fine with my Green Label Black Sabbaths. And those are probably the ones I'm going to stick with for a while. But this one in particular, unbelievable. Proto-metal. Everybody should have this record in their collection. They just should. All right, Boston, self-titled. This is a very cool Japanese press. It's on Epic. With that really cool, red, white, and blue obi. I really like this obi. That's kind of a cool one. But Boston, Everybody kind of sleeps on Boston. I don't know why. I always try to, pump them up every chance I get, because every song on this album is unbelievable. Go on to Spotify, click on this album, and just listen to the entire thing. You're gonna be like, whoa! I totally forgot that one, Boston sang that, and then two, you probably forgot that song even existed. But it's a jam. It's unbelievable. All right, The Doors. Another classic one. This is a first U.S. press with that big E Electra, and this is a mono copy. I always try to keep a mono and a stereo in my collection because, with the mono, you can hear him say like some curse words and like kind of stuff under his breath a little bit. I think it's on Break On Through, but it's just just one of those little things that collectors. It's just a collectorism thing, On the mono version is the only time you can hear that. On the stereo version, they edit it all out, so you can't hear him talk, under his breath or whatever. So, first mono press. I love this record so much. I have all the Doors albums. I love the Doors. Again, this is like a really cool way to sink your teeth into psych a little bit, because it's not far out there. A lot of the songs on here you've heard on the radio or have heard in movies or TV shows. Like, it's very commercial for sure. But, it's a good way to kind of sink your teeth into that kind of realm of music without getting, too deep too soon, Because you can get turned off from psych if you go too deep too soon. I've been there. Trust me. So, good way to ease yourself in. But, the Doors, unbelievable stuff. All right, this one took me a little while to get into in my youth. For whatever dumb reason, I just didn't like it, and now as I got older, I am now obsessed. But that's Elton John. Holy smokes, is he good. You don't need me to tell you how talented Elton John as a musician is, but this is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, first U.S. press. It's a double LP. This one, I picked this up in a record store in San Diego. I mean, that's just crazy clean. I mean, the corners are sharp. It is very, very cool. But I love this album so much. And, for whatever reason, like in high school and like early college and stuff, I was just never into Elton John. I always thought, for whatever reason, in my head, it was old people music, even though I was really into what you would consider old people music. I loved 60s and 70s stuff. Even back in high school, I was obsessed with it. I loved 60s and 70s rock and roll. But for whatever reason, it just in my mind, for no really good reason at all, I just had this into old people music, Like, I'm not going to like that. And, it took me till, probably later on in college or even after that, where I was like, man, Elton John is the man. I love Elton John so much. That is a fantastic record. Again, in my opinion, this is the one to have in your collection. It's a classic. All right, and number 10, King Crimson. In the Court of the Crimson King, an observation by King Crimson. Holy smokes, is this one great. It's just right down the middle progressive rock. It's iconic cover art, iconic music, sampled galore by a lot of your favorite artists. It came from this record. It's just, what else can you say? It's fantastic, and everybody should have this record in their collection. And these were in no particular order. That was 10. This is number 10. Flip these all around. I just, picked out the 10. There was no particular order. It's not ranked or anything. Please listen to that one. 21st Century Schizoid Man. Unbelievable. All right, I have a bonus record. This would be this is 11, but you know what? You can break the rules. It's okay. I got a bonus record here for you. And that's a Leonard Skinner. This is Led Zeppelin. I just couldn't make, a top 10 essential list without including Led Zeppelin. But it's just impossible to choose one. It's one of the most impossible asks. I get asked sometimes, like, what is my favorite Led Zeppelin album? I truly don't know. If you held a gun to my head, I would have a hard time actually picking one. with a lot of these artists, in Elton John, the Beatles especially, in your heart of hearts, you probably have one that is your favorite. You may go back and forth and waver a little bit, like, oh, I like, Revolver, or I like Abbey Road, or I like the White Album. You're like, it's tough to choose, but in your heart of hearts, you likely have one. For whatever reason, I cannot choose my favorite Led Zeppelin. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's not even that. I can't even say that I go back and forth every day. I can't even pick one because I don't know. I really like Led Zeppelin 4. Like, and there's some that I know that are not in the running, right? Coda, things like that. I know that, but like between 1 through 4 and Physical Graffiti, I guess I can't. I don't know. It's just the way it is. But here's Led Zeppelin 3. All that to say, have some Led Zeppelin in your collection, okay? Do yourself a favor, get the lead out. Have some Led Zeppelin in your collection. Have all of them in your collection, okay? They didn't come out with that much. Their whole discography, I think, is like 9 albums. 9 studio albums, anyway. So, let's get all 9, I mean, they're all readily available, and none of them are going to break the bank for normal, U.S. first press. But, so this is the first U.S. press on Atlantic, working wheel and cool stuff. So, do yourself a favor, get some Led Zeppelin in your collection. All right, so that's going to do it. Now, that being said, next week's video is going to be the same, only it's going to be the rare version. Okay? So it's going to be the top 10 rare records that I think you should have in your collection. Now, that being said, they're rare, and with rarity usually comes with the price tag. So, don't run out and try to get a first press of the one I'm going to show you next week. If you just want the music on vinyl, that's awesome to me. I think you should pursue that. Get a reissue or listen to it on Spotify or whatever you want to do. But I think it's just fun to do a rare version of that as well. So I'm going to do it. You guys tune in typically to see rare, cool records. So just a way of doing that. So there's 10 records that I think, if you're collecting rare stuff, I think it should be in your collection. So that being said, I also just redid my Holy Moly wall with basically I added like another, 4th row, I guess. So you can see that there. Let's take a peek here. Look at that. There we go. So I went from 9 to 12 by adding another row in there. I think that looks better. Fills out the space a little bit more, and I get to show some cool records up there. So, a lot of those will probably be in the video next week, and some of them won't, but that's going to do it for this one. I appreciate it, and catch you next one. Thanks.